Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Fuller and I am a former elite athlete, oncology patient navigator, an advocate and a breast cancer survivor myself. I am very honored to be on Because It's There with Saray Khumalo today on this amazing podcast. And I hope that my story and my journey inspires other people. There's been some amazing stories. I've listened to a lot of these podcasts of very inspirational people. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to be on this podcast.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Because It's There, a podcast about leadership, a podcast that reminds us that in spite of everything that's going on around us, inside, within us, we are leaders and we are capable of changing the world through our actions today, tomorrow, and make sure that the next generation is better off because we dared to step just a little bit out and to be ourselves and to be leaders that the world tomorrow needs. And today, to remind us of the fact that curveballs will come, and when they do, we can stand up stronger, is none other than Nicole Fuller. Nicole Fuller, welcome to Because It's There.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and I'm very excited to be doing this podcast and very privileged. I look up to you a lot. I've learned a lot from you in the last little bit of time that we have spent together training for our Mafadi hike. And it's been a great new challenge and learning experience for me.
Fantastic. Thank you. I continue to learn from you as well. So thank you so much for saying that. So before we start our podcast, Nicole, I would like to pose a question, just a statement that I would like you to finish. You know, in my 20s, when I was 20 something, I wish I knew that.
I think just not to sweat the small stuff in life. You know, I think when we're young, we worry about, I think, a lot what people think and what people expect from us. And I think I've learned now at a more mature age and after what I've been through in life, not to worry so much about the small stuff and not to worry what people think and what their expectation of you is. I think coming from an elite sports background, you have a lot of pressure on you, performing and being a top athlete and winning. And I always used to think, that it was like a big deal if you lost a race and what would people think and, that kind of thing. I think as you grow older, you just learn, just not to worry about people and, just to do your own thing and, get on with life kind of thing, where when you're young, you just, you worry about stupid things, they are actually a total waste of time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But let's go into you. I've done a little bit of digging and I've looked at Nicole. I believe you were awarded full athletic scholarship to the University of Nebraska in the US. When you were younger, received Springbok national colors for track, cross country, and road running, have many national titles behind you for road marathon, and represented South Africa at the 6th World Half Marathon Championships. Wow. Qualified in the Women's National Olympics team, I think 1996, I believe. I'm not sure if you actually ended up going. And I've seen you on the mountain. You talked about Mafadi. You are indeed a top runner, which is from the way you go up those mountains. So tell us a little bit more about your journey and how all these awards and accolades have impacted your life and how they've helped you in your career as we know it today.
Yeah. Well, my father was a Springbok athlete, so it's very much in my blood. He was actually a Springbok race walker and held many South African records in the 50 and the 20K walk. Wow. And he unfortunately didn't go to the Olympics because of apartheid, going back in that era. Yeah. And, he never really pushed me when I was very young. When I was at primary school, I used to win my little sprint races, and he never really pushed me. And then when I got to high school, I actually I did some sprint races and I didn't do that well. I didn't make the school team in that. And then I had the most amazing school coach who saw my potential in longer distances, and he suggested, why don't you try the longer distances? And that is how I got into it. So I started pretty young at 14, and I actually received my provincial colors at 14 the first time. And then as I moved up in distance, I got better. And it's quite a funny story. I think it was halfway through matric in the June. Then we didn't have cell phones or anything, and my home telephone rang, and I ran to my parents' bedroom and answered it. And there was a lot of static on the line, and there was this guy saying, started talking to me in an American accent, and he said, "Yeah, this is Mark Devaney from the University of Nebraska, and I'd like to introduce myself to you, and we've seen your rankings, and would you like a scholarship?" So I mean, it was like quite, and that's how I was offered my scholarship, and it was like, wow, this sounds exciting. I mean, it was totally sort of unexpected. So that's how it started, and I mean, I didn't really even question that. I thought it would be a great opportunity. I think my parents were quite worried, and that I was so young and so keen to go, but it was. Yeah.
I can imagine. I'm sure the excitement of, somebody actually noticed me, and at that level must have been overwhelming for them too, even though they were adults at that time. What did your friends think?
Well, all my running friends, and then he was actually one of my very good friends, was actually a boyfriend at the time, and also a top athlete, Jean Verster. And he also thought, well, this is quite a good idea. And I think his coach then approached Nebraska as well, and he was also offered a scholarship. So we actually landed up, we traveling together, which was quite nice to go. Yes, and I think we were like one of the first in that sort of era to be asked to go. So I think it opened the door a lot, because there are just so many South Africans now going to the US on scholarships, right across all the sports. And it's really such a great opportunity, I think, for our youngsters. I mean, the Americans, and I think it's great that they offer foreign, students the opportunity to go and get exposure. And I think the American collegiate system is excellent, for competitive sport. And it certainly develops you and sets you up and gives you a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are an athlete, you are a mother, you are a sister, and you're also a coach and a wife, Please rank those roles in your life if you can, and give us the logic why you've ranked them in the way that you have, because we're talking about women being anything and everything. How do you rank those? How do you multitask between all those roles that you feel?
Well, I think I'd rank my running first, because that is what that is the first thing that, I started, at the age of 14, and I think it sort of set me up for my life. The opportunities, receiving a scholarship, traveling the world. I mean, it was quite a difficult era that I was in. I was in, an era I was actually very privileged to be in the same era as Zola Budd and Zola Budd Peterson and Alana Meyer. I mean, we were, friends and competitors. And of course, we were in apartheid. So, I mean, we all suffered from apartheid. We couldn't compete internationally. So we missed out a lot in our junior years. We couldn't go to junior world championships and those kind of things that our young juniors can go to today. So, we were awarded Springbok colors on merit and on, where we came in the South African championships and time qualifications. And, that is how they selected us. So, I would say my running first, because it sort of set me up for life, and it taught me, so much discipline, commitment, perseverance, which set me up for, dealing with cancer later on. And then, getting married, and I married an athlete. I mean, Chris is also very active, and he's done Ironman and Comrades and lots of 2 Oceans, and then of course motherhood. And I think motherhood, totally changes you. I mean, as I think it's probably the most rewarding thing of all, having your own children and going through that whole journey with them. And I mean, my boys are quite big now, and looking back, initially when I had Ayrton, my oldest, I was still competing seriously. So it was quite difficult juggling, and you need to have a lot of support. And I had amazing support from my parents, and I had an amazing helper who, you know, would come in early on Sundays if we needed to go and do a long run. And juggling, traveling overseas and stuff, you know, there was always a juggle, and my mom would step in. So it was great. And then I have got quite a big age gap. And then after I had my second son, I actually decided to retire from competitive running. But I think, you know, my sport set me up for how I wanted my boys to be brought up, and wanted them to be involved in sport, because it just teaches you so much. And they did. I mean, my boys did a lot. They did from ballet to diving to kung fu to swimming to running. So they've been exposed to a lot, and we always supported them in whatever they wanted to try, which I think is very important, you know. And then I think, you know, so what was it? And then becoming a coach. So I became a coach when my youngest son decided to. We realized that he was quite a good runner, and I got involved with Fitness from Africa Running Club, an old colleague of mine who was also an athlete when we were juniors. And I took Greg to him, and we were going twice a week. And, you know, then I just thought, you know, I could give back and help Marcel out. And so I said to Marcel, you know, I'd like to get involved in the coaching, and, you know, would you be, you know, let me coach? And he was very, you know, happy to, and he let me. I did a few coaching courses with him, you know, having had my own background, but also not having been in it for a while. And that's, so I sort of coached Greg within another little group, and I had a lot of junior athletes, and it was really fun, you know. So yeah, that is how I rank, you know. I'm not coaching so much now because although Greg, he's not running so competitively now, he's decided he wants to focus more on academics, and I'm so involved in patient navigation and cancer advocacy and cancer exercise now. Yeah. So but I think it was just great to be involved with Greg and the coaching, and sort of get back into it, and, you know, connecting with a lot of other coaches and former athletes that I knew, and, you know, that, you know, it was you know, nice to get back into that.
So we have a number of athletes in the Fuller family, you know, with both your boys, you know, into sports, and your husband into running. You mentioned that. And now you talked about your dad having been quite an athlete himself. Can we assume that this gene is coming from your side of the family, or from your husband's side of the family? And
yeah, sorry.
Why is running and keeping active so important to the Fuller family?
Well, you know, I think coming from my dad, my mom was also very sporty, and she was a netball player, more a team sport. And, you know, I followed my dad more into individual and into athletics. And I think, you know, my husband, he won't like me saying this, but I mean, he only started competitive sport once he finished varsity, and his family weren't really sporty as well, but he got involved at university. And I think after like a month's training, ran comrades, which I thought was crazy, you know. And he did all the typical things that South African people do. They don't have any background, but they'll run comrades, you know, which I always used to tease him, because I'm not great. I would never run comrades. It just doesn't suit me. I don't like doing ultra distance kind of stuff, you know. And I mean, I actually think that comrades is crazy, and I think South Africans overtrain totally because of you know, they've got that comrades mindset. So they think they must do hectic ultra distance, you know. But yeah, so I think it definitely comes from my side of the family. But I mean, Chris, you know, we've got a great lifestyle, and I think because both of us do it, you know, and funny enough, our boys, you know, it's quite interesting that they're both not all that competitive. They've got their own minds, kind of thing, and it's sometimes, you know, I find it quite fascinating that, you know, and my husband gets quite cross because Eton actually is not doing much at the moment. You know, he's just sort of finding his feet, having graduated from university, and he actually graduated. He's got a film degree, and the film industry is quite quiet, so it's quite tough for him to find something. But anyway, he's tutoring with his old high school at the moment to keep busy. But he was never, I mean, he had a lot of potential, you know, when he was younger, and he was quite competitive. But both my boys definitely aren't as competitive as my husband and I. And I find that quite interesting. So, I mean, with both of our genes, they, it's not as big deal for them. You know, Greg has like said to me, now, Mom, I actually don't want to commit fully to running. I don't want to go to the Olympics. It's not my thing. I want to focus on academics and finding my own way in life, And I think initially with Ethan too, he was a very talented springboard diver, and he could have gone quite far. And he also just decided he didn't like the pressure. He just wanted to do his own thing. So they come from that background. But I just find it quite interesting though that, even with the genetics, everyone has their own mindset, and, you can't force your children to do something. And I was devastated when Ethan gave up, but I think also as I've realized that I've got older, they've got their own minds, and they've got to live their own lives and decide what they want to do. And, you can only guide them so much. And I think we gave them the best grounding. We've certainly given them the best example of a good lifestyle. I mean, we don't, being active, we don't drink, we don't smoke, that kind of lifestyle. So they, and so they've seen that, and at least they've got that, good grounding, and I suppose good morals, and learned this, how disciplined we are, but they're both very different to us,
I can imagine. So with your two sons, Nicole, and you talked about having the firstborn and still going out there to race. What changed? How did you prepare differently? After becoming a mother, was it gradual or it was sudden? You had to change how to prepare for races, how to get yourself ready for the starting point.
Yeah. I sort of learned from some of the other athletes that, had children, and that, you've got to have a good support structure to be able to carry on training at, at that level. And like I say, I was very lucky to have my mom's support and a good helper, and, Chris's support always if I did need to travel. And, you just need that support. And because, it's quite difficult. Like, we went to run the London Marathon, and I was actually quite upset with my husband because I actually chose in London to try and qualify for the Olympics. And he decided, no, he also wanted to run, and we'd just take Ethan with us. And his sister would look after Ethan in London while we ran the race, So, I mean, I got into the elite field, and we stayed in the hotel with the elite athletes, and Ethan was with us. And I mean, I remember traveling, on the plane, and we gave him some Atarax to try and make him sleep. And so he slept on the plane, but when we got to London, it had like the opposite effect. It made him totally hyper. And then the next 2 nights, he didn't sleep. So, I mean, we were like a bit wrecked. And then he'd never met his aunt before. And now we had to leave this 2-year-old with someone that he didn't know. And he screamed. He absolutely screamed most of the day because he didn't know Wendy. And I don't know if this Atarax had some kind of a thing with him, and it was hard as a mom. And then I had a terrible race. I actually didn't finish. I cramped at 21 Ks, and I didn't finish the race. And I was taken by ambulance to go get checked out, and I couldn't contact my husband. It was quite a thing. And, that just sort of, the sacrifices you have to make sometimes as a mother, you've got to deal with those things. And I mean, as much as we try to plan, and I mean, I still sometimes think, we should have actually just left Ethan here with my mom. It would have actually made it a lot easier. But in hindsight, I suppose, you look back on the experience and we laugh at it now, And I always say to people, don't ever give your children Atarax on the plane because you might have a rebound effect.
The gift of hindsight. I want to actually take this moment to allow our sponsors to send a message to our listeners. They do make this podcast possible.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
When did you realize that you were born to run?
Well, like I said, I started at primary school, and, the English primary schools, you just have your little sports day once a year. And I used to win my little sprint. And it's actually quite interesting story. In grade 1, I was chosen out of my house to, I won the trials to represent my house. And my dad said to me, well, if you win your race, I mean, it was like 80 meters, I think. And my dad said to me, well, if you win your race, because he had all these trophies and things. And he said to me, if you win your race, I'll give you one of my little cups. It was like a little silver cup. And I mean, just this really made me very excited. I thought, sure, because it was going to be my first trophy. And anyway, so we went off and we ran, and I was really expected to win. And, the race started, and I was actually in the lead the whole way. And right at the end, this other girl pipped me, like literally on the line. And, so I came second. And so my dad refused to give me the trophy. He said, I only said that I would give you the trophy if you won the race, but you came second, and you don't get a medal or a trophy if you come second. And I remember I was so upset, that I didn't get. But then the next year I made sure that I won that race. So, that sort of set the mindset. And I mean, in primary school, I think my father persuaded me to go, I think it was about 10, go and run a cross-country race. And I mean, I wasn't fit. And I went and ran, and I got a stitch halfway through, and I landed up walking. And he got so cross with me, and he screamed at me, and what's your problem? And I was in such pain I couldn't run, and that sort of put me off cross country for a while. And then actually a funny story at high school, I had this amazing coach school coach who saw my potential. And when I started running cross country, the same kind of thing, the first school cross country, I went out and I pushed myself so hard that I actually passed out just before the line. And I sort of came round and I finished the race. And then I passed out again, and they had to take me to my GP to check me out. And I just exerted myself so high. And my dad came home that night and he said, well, that's it. Now I can see you actually want to do this. And, now if you commit, you've got to train. And, that will. So, that sort of set me up for from being competitive. And, and then I realized that I was talented, but I needed to put in the work, especially for distance running. And, so that is how it all progressed and started, at sort of school. But like I say, the English schools, it was only in high school that I actually got, which I think is a good thing, because I really don't think children should be pushed at primary school level. And in South Africa, we have a huge problem with the Afrikaans schools, because there's so much burnout, because the kids are focused on one thing, and by the time they get to high school, or even university, they drop out.
They burn out, exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of, it sounds like it was a journey in you realizing that this is something that you wanted to do. You talk about your coaches and stuff like that. One of the things that is important, especially in climbing, Everest as an example, there are these guys that are called Sherpas or guides that guide you and don't necessarily climb with you. And I use that metaphor for coaches and the support team that we all have as we get on to whatever it is that we see as success. So who would you say has been the most important Sherpa in your journey? Maybe it's one, maybe it's two. Tell us a little bit more about them.
Yeah, I think definitely more than one. I mean, I think my father to start off with, and then this high school coach that I had, his name was Mr. Ngwini. He sort of set the things going for me, and he encouraged me and got me into the longer distances. And then, I sort of took off quite quickly, and I got provincial colors like the first time I ran, and got to SA juniors and stuff like that. And then my dad sort of took over my coaching. He just felt that he could probably do more. And Mr. Ngwini was quite upset about that, but my dad just thought, that he could maybe help me more as we went on into high school. So, I mean, I think, my dad and then Mr. Ngwini, and then, right through my athletic career, like I say, I had amazing competitors, who achieved so much, Zola and Ilana, and just learning from people. My coach in America, who was so amazing, to me, who offered me the scholarship, and they did so much. And then I think going forward, and then into my cancer survivorship, which I think you want to talk about later, and the incredible women that I've been exposed to as a result of my cancer, very powerful, and interestingly enough, all women. So it's been a few of those, but I think you want to talk more about that a bit later.
Absolutely, I think that's why this is really about resilience, life after cancer, and this has given us a bit of a context of who you are, and where you've come from, and where you're at. Absolutely, I would love to get into that. But let's first start. You talked about being a coach yourself, for I think it's called the Fitness from Africa running.
Okay,
yeah, for 3 years, coaching cross country. And I want to look at how you approached coaching. What did you pick up from your coaches that you used? What did you do differently? And how important was that role for you as an athlete yourself?
I think the biggest thing is understanding. And, it was interesting because, Marcel has been in the coaching for a lot longer. I mean, I never coached after my own competitive running, and I learned so much myself from my own coaches and from my own, as from experience. I mean, all the years of training and the different programs I've tried and all of those. And what was interesting with Marcel that we didn't have is they call it dynamic warm-up or dynamic stretching, which we didn't do. We always did like a warm-up run, and then we did static stretching. And I mean, so when I got to Marcel, and he said, no, it doesn't work like that anymore. Static stretching is out. You warm up and then you do what they call dynamic stretching. So it's more like explosive things and balance and explosive kind of exercises. Knee, squats and lunges and knee lifts and, moving quickly, and not static stretching that you hold. Static stretching is like left for after the training session, after you've warmed down. So, I mean, that was the first thing. But, everything else was pretty similar. The methods have changed somewhat, but are still basic. But what I found was interesting is seeing, because having been through it myself, I could immediately see which, insight into the children that I trained and which ones were going to be committed and which ones weren't going to be committed. And just interesting to see the characters from each child, which ones were very competitive or which ones were there because the mothers wanted them there, or, so that was very interesting, for me to see. And Marcel is quite a soft coach. And, I sometimes felt he could, sometimes be a little bit harsher on the athletes, but, you've got to be careful, I think, especially with the younger runners, you don't want to put them off or burn them out, but, it just irritated me. You can see the kids who would try and, as you say, get out of things or not want to do more, or versus the ones who did, so I think having come from, my own competitive background, I think I had a lot of insight into that, yes, which, people who haven't been through that probably wouldn't have,
Yeah. So when you look at, South African coaches, whether from a distance or where you're closely involved, what dynamics have you seen evolve over time in terms of how coaching is approached, how coaches are working with athletes in different disciplines? Do you have a view on that?
I think we're still very behind in South Africa in terms of, I think even in development, and I think it all comes down to funding and, when you look at the Olympics and what it takes to become an Olympic athlete, just to become an Olympic athlete, not even necessarily a medal winner. It takes a lot of money and a lot of commitment from the country, and you need to have top coaches that know what they're doing. You need to have, from grassroots levels, early development to, and talent ID, and to build the athletes up. You look at countries like the United States or, China, Russia, they go out and they identify these young athletes and they nurture them, right through. Yeah. And, but they've got the money and they've got the funds. Unfortunately, that's where we're lacking. And I get quite sad because, South Africa is such, we're such a sporting rich country and we love our sport so much. So the expectation, there's always so much expectation. And then if our athletes lose, it's why did we get so few medals? And that's exactly what happened in Tokyo now. But people don't realize what it takes. And unfortunately, we don't have the funds to back our Olympic athletes and to, to give them that support, that they're going to medal. Australia and these countries, they spend, in the US, millions and millions on development and encouragement. So I get really sad when South Africans get annoyed because, our athletes don't perform. The talent is there, the coaching is there. We've got great coaches and we've got great people at the moment who are trying to develop our athletes, but again, it comes down to governance and corruption and, the money being lost or, going to other things, it's just really sad, and I think that's why so many of our young athletes are actually going to the States, which is also sad because, they're getting better opportunities there.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Before I go into your cancer and your journey there, I want to actually hone into the Tokyo Olympics. As somebody that follows the sports very closely, give us your analysis, Nicole Fuller's analysis, the good, the bad, and the great of 2021 Tokyo Olympics.
Yeah, look, I think it was fantastic because, what Tokyo did, what Japan did, is just remarkable, especially in the COVID era. I mean, we were all so concerned, was it on, was it off? A lot of people said it shouldn't have happened. Yeah. You heard of all the outbreaks, in the village, in the beginning, and you thought, oh my word, is it gonna? But one thing I must say about Japan, I've run in Japan twice, in an Ekiden relay, and it is such an amazing country. They are so organized. They are such respectful people. Everything's on time. Everything's perfect. So I didn't expect anything less. It was just so brilliantly organized. It was just sad, though, that there couldn't be people there, because I think that is just so much, a part of the Olympics. And I think, all the world records, it was actually just amazing how the athletes have stepped up, and I think maybe it was a good thing that it was postponed because it gave the athletes a time to sort of process, this whole COVID thing and learning to deal with it. I think, we've had to change so many in all aspects of our life because of COVID. So I think the athletes did the most remarkable job as well, preparing themselves and the way they handled it, it was really, I loved it. I could watch Olympics forever. I really enjoyed, watching.
Absolutely, and well done to our South African athletes and Paralympics.
Yes,
that, brought home medals, and that.
Well, that's
Yeah, you want to say something about that, South Africa?
Yeah, no. It is great, and it's another thing. I don't think a lot of normal people who don't understand athletes or haven't been at the top level of sport themselves understand how difficult it is and the pressure that you go through. And what I'm finding very fascinating is this whole aspect of so many of these young top world-class athletes coming out, sort of with all the mental pressure and how difficult they're finding that. And I think it also comes down to social media and, there's much more pressure on them. As I said to you earlier, I think, as an athlete, you have, people expect from you. And I think you perceive expectation more, you put it more on yourself, if I can try and explain it, then you actually realize that people are, you put more pressure on yourself kind of thing. Yes. And I think with social media, these young athletes like Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, this young American gymnast, Michael Phelps, the greatest Olympian ever, swimmer. They've all been coming out and saying how difficult it is to deal with the pressure and the expectation and just almost, having a normal life as well as, all the training and expectation. And I think especially often when you retire, it's very difficult for a world-class athlete to suddenly stop and everything is different, to sort of adjust to normal life. Yeah. And I think most normal people don't understand that, the pressure and the expectation and just the expectation you put on yourself, like I said earlier, it's almost like, I used to feel so guilty when I lost because I used to think of how disappointed my coaches and my husband or, you almost, and then I learned, but it's just a race and we're just normal people and, you're actually being silly, but it's just a perception I think you have because, being, I think most top athletes are A-level personalities. So you've got that strive for perfection and, being the best and, the impact of training and, almost not having a normal life in some aspects because you've got to be so committed to be at the top. And I think, I think maybe people also put athletes on a pedestal much more than, look, you want to be. And I mean, a lot of people say because they're making so much money, you're sort of entitled to criticize or to do this or to do that, But I think people have got to realize that you're actually human and, you're just a normal person,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where the mental impact, of these athletes, that it really impacts a lot,
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So, Nicole, I want to go back to life beyond cancer. As an athlete, a mother, and Nicole, you suddenly are performing in a sport where you know that if I put in so much, I'll get out so much more. And if this goes wrong, this is where I could do it differently. But suddenly you get the news that, hey, you have cancer. You have very little control over what's happening. How did you receive that news? And how did you process and deal with it at that time? And knowing what you know today, what could you have done differently?
So it was, when I discovered, I actually found the swelling in my breast. I actually had it's called a cardiac ablation. I had an arrhythmia in my heart that they thought was genetic. And often when I do my run, suddenly my heart rate would just race up and I'd have to stop and I sort of felt a little bit dizzy and then it would settle down. And I had it for a while and it sort of got worse. So I decided to go and see a cardiologist and they picked up that I had this arrhythmia and I had a cardiac ablation to sort it out. And it was just after that I was recovering from that and I was sort of doing a self-breast exam and I felt the swelling. It was more like a swelling. There's the different types of breast cancer. It's not only always just a lump. And I got such a fright. I must say my heart sank. It was almost like immediately I sensed, this isn't good. And I tried to put it out of my mind and I thought, no, it can't be cancer. It's just a hormonal thing, it will maybe go away. And I sort of ignored it for 2 weeks and I was still getting over this cardiac ablation and, but I kept, and then after 2 weeks, I actually said to my husband, I've actually found this thing and and he said, well, what are you waiting for? You better, you need to make an appointment right now. So, phone your gynecologist. And I phoned and I got an appointment really quickly to have a mammogram. And, but like I say, I just had this deep down feeling. I sort of knew. And, but I tried to put it out of my mind. You try and be as positive and, because I think only 5 to 10% of women who find a lump that it actually lands up being a cancer. Very difficult to read. I had quite dense breasts, but they could definitely see something. So I had the mammogram and then she said to me, just please wait in the waiting room. And then she said, no, we want to do a biopsy immediately. And then I really got a fright. Then I knew, when they start saying they need to do a biopsy, and I went in for the biopsy and the radiographer was, she sort of started the ultrasound because it's done with the ultrasound. And she sort of reacted a bit weird. And she suddenly said to me, no, I need to go and call the doctor, straight away. And then I also, when they want to quickly call the doctor, and she went and called him and he came and he was, he started the procedure and he looked and he said, no, I'm going to do this now. But I could see that he was concerned. I picked up his sort of anxiety and I said to him, do you think it's cancer? And he said, I can't really answer that because, sometimes it is cancer and sometimes it's not. And I can't tell you until we have the biopsy results. But I don't know, I was really scared then. I just, sort of sensed. And anyway, I had it and he said, your results will come out in 3 days. And that waiting is just the worst. And especially, if you, like I say, I just sort of knew. And they actually phoned me, I think it was less than 2 days. I think it was the next, I had it on the month, I think it was a Tuesday. The late Wednesday afternoon, my phone went and it was my gynecologist room. And she said, Nicole, Dr. Ellen Gould wants to see you now. And I said, have I got cancer? And she wouldn't tell me on the phone. She said, Dr. Gould, please just come in. But I knew, and I promised you that drive, and I live close to Santon Clinic. I just knew my heart, that pounding, that fear, and then everything starts going through your mind. Are you actually are you gonna die? My boys are still young, and anyway, I got there and I had to wait because she had other patients, and that was also the worst, just waiting. And then I was absolutely petrified to tell my mom because I knew she was gonna. I knew, that it was cancer even before they had said. And I didn't want to tell my mom because I knew that she would freak out. So I had to wait for her because she actually worked for my husband, wait for them to finish work. And I was still waiting to go in, and I didn't want to phone and upset my mom, so I waited. And then I said to my husband, I'm about to go in. I'm sure it's cancer, the way Heather called me so quickly. And I went in. Then he was on his way. And then she basically said to me straight away, it's cancer, And I mean, I just cried. And then I said, well, what now? And she straight away said, well, the only person I would ever refer anyone to is Prof. Ben. And it was sort of weird after that. Then they scheduled my appointment, and then I had to wait. I think that was the Wednesday, and I had an appointment with Carol on the Saturday. So, that waiting was really hectic. It was, and the not knowing, I think, I'm the kind of person I want to know. And, it's that waiting, that in between, and then I just couldn't wait to get to Carol. And I mean, I remember the connection of waiting in her room, and I'd heard so much about her. I'd actually heard her speak on the radio, like a year or two before. And we were busy filling out my forms. I knew you can wait for hours, even if you have an appointment for Carol, and we were waiting. And she came out of her back room, and she was in tackies and a t-shirt and jeans, and that just struck me. I thought, she just looked so relaxed, and I was just immediately at ease with her, I just sort of hit it off with her, and, she explained everything to me and gave me all the information, and I needed to know exactly what was happening, what type I had, and they provide all that information for you, which, I find important. And then I think I had because I was so at ease with her and I trusted her, and then I met my plastic surgeon who was going to do my reconstruction, because I was fortunate enough to be able to have reconstruction immediately. That they realized that from the start, and they thought that was possible. And even with my plastic, I just immediately was comfortable with them. And then I just sort of, I just let go, and I just sort of trusted the process. I didn't worry too much ahead. I just sort of took it from there. And, even once I had the mastectomy, you just got to get through one day at a time, deal with the pain, recover. And I think I did. And I think because I had so much confidence in my medical team, I recovered so quickly. And then, of course, I was determined to get back to being active, because I hated, not exercising. And I think it was about 12 days. I actually persuaded my husband to buy me an elliptical bike, and so that I could run, and I didn't have to use my upper arms for anything, because of course when you have a mastectomy, it affects everything in your shoulders, and they don't like you to do any exercise with your arms. So I was able to do this elliptical thing with my arms still, and at least that gave me something to do. And then I started walking quickly, doing walks, and because I had to exercise, it's just to keep me sane, kind of thing. And I mean, then once I got back into that, it was just a matter of adapting, and then seeing my oncologist and the treatment that I was. And I mean, I was very privileged that I didn't need chemotherapy and radiation, because I must say that was my biggest fear. Chemo is very scary, and it's not a nice thing to go through. And I was extremely lucky to escape chemotherapy. And then my recovery went quickly. I think 6 weeks later, my plastic surgeon said, you can run. And then from there, I don't know if you want to go into more about my navigation later, but my recovery was remarkable, as I say, because of my fitness, I think, and I was fit before, although I'd had the ablation, but, I sort of had started running again, and I think it just kept me sane, and it gave me something else to focus on, and not worrying so much about, about the cancer, just getting healthy again.
That is a powerful story, Nicole, and thank you for sharing it with us. And it actually transitioned you into a new career that you're following, Oncology Patient Navigator. What does that mean? And why did you go into that path? And what is it about that patient navigator, Oncology Patient Navigator role is important for a patient that is recovering from cancer, that has discovered they've got cancer? What do you do for them, and why do they need you?
So, for a few months after my surgery, I sort of was a bit like in limbo, sort of. I sort of knew, because I had a good recovery, that I wanted to get involved in breast cancer, to maybe do some more. And, Prof. Ben has got the Breast Health Foundation support group. So I actually looked at a few other support groups, and then, but I settled on BHF because it was Prof. Ben's foundation. And I contacted, Louise, who heads that up, and I said I'd like to come and come to a support group meeting and see what it's all about. So that's sort of how I got into it. And, they'd have like mornings where they'd have very informative talks by either doctors or someone else who was involved in breast cancer survivorship, and, topics that are relevant for breast cancer survivors, just to motivate you and to support you. So I got involved with that, and it was through Breast Health Foundation that I heard about patient navigation. And I also got involved with public speaking, actually, because I thought, I could also use my story from my athletics career and sort of bring it across into my breast cancer journey to help motivate and inspire, other cancer patients on my journey. So, and I did that. That's how I met Charlotte Duplessis from Women of Stature. She introduced, and it was funny, I met her at a Breast Health Foundation function that she was doing in conjunction with Women of Stature. And that's how I heard about Charlotte. And then I was on her mailing list, and they launched their speakers bureau. So I actually did my speakers training through Charlotte. That's how I got connected. And then the navigation came up. One of the navigators, or a few of the navigators from Breast Health Foundation and Netcare, were sent to do this navigation training, and that's how I heard about it. And I actually then did research into it, and it just jumped out at me and it spoke to me. So, basically, patient navigation it's to help patients and their families, because, the families also go through this need. It's to overcome all the barriers that you face on this very daunting journey, the shock and the absolute shock, and sort of overwhelmed. You're so overwhelmed. You're suddenly thrown into this world that you don't know anything about, and all these terminologies and all the different types of things and all the different tests and all that kind of thing, that goes on. So, basically, we're there to hold the patient's hand right through the journey. And I think what really struck me with the Breast Health Foundation is how Prof. Ben used her navigators. They were all breast cancer survivors, because, we can, of course, identify so much, and we've been through that journey ourselves. And although every journey is different, and not everyone deals with it the same, and, we can just, connect with the patients because we do understand what they're going through, and I think it just gives me such a sense of purpose when I do sit down with a patient who's just been diagnosed and their family, and, you just almost put them at ease by just preparing them more, by giving them, the evidence-based research and explaining to them what they're going to go through, the processes from surgery, what to expect, what to do and what to use, after mastectomy, all the side effects you can expect, and how to deal with them, when you go through chemotherapy, radiation, and then even into survivorship, which I really love, because survivorship then focuses on after all the treatment. And, often the patients get lost because suddenly all your appointments are done, your treatment's finished, but there still can be a lot of lingering side effects, your mental health, your body image, everything is impacted. So you still need a lot of guidance, and, you continually go for checkups. And I think your biggest fear is a cancer recurrence. And so mentally, every time you go for a scan or a check, it has a huge impact, because, as positive as you are, you think, what if, what if it's come back? What if it's, so, there also needs to be a lot of emotional and mental support for patients, and survivorship. And then, of course, lifestyle and exercise and diet play such a huge role, and especially in quality of life going forward. Yeah. So then I actually did a cancer exercise training course that I heard about. I was on an interview for one of the radio stations on my cancer journey, and they had a guest on, and he'd done a course in cancer exercise and gave me all the details. So that also was great, and I loved that, because it sort of ties in with everything, with the navigation, and then being able to help patients in survivorship. And Prof. Ben's very pro survivorship and exercise and lifestyle and diet to try and get the patients to have a good quality of life and to focus on quality of life. So, it all just sort of connected and really spoke to me. So, I absolutely love what I'm doing. And I've just met such incredible, women on this journey from, like I say, from the foundation, Breast Health Foundation, and then Prof. Ben herself has been an amazing, she's mentored me and allowed me to do my navigation, because I then have done my training through the Academy of Oncology Nurse and Patient Navigation, which is an American organization. And those other navigators had done this course, so that's how I connected. And she said, no, you do that, and you can do your practical training with me, because you've got to have so many practical hours to qualify for the exam. I still haven't done the exam because of COVID, but it's continual learning and online education and just keeping up to date with everything. And she was amazing. So she allowed me to do, my practical navigation at Helen Joseph under her. And I've just learned so much from her. So, it's sort of gone from, Charlotte being quite an influence and getting me on the road to the speaking. And then, Prof. Ben, my plastic surgeon, also was, amazing. Just meeting, and then just on the journey, like, through Charlotte meeting you, and, another whole, part of my journey, and Philotimo, which I'm very involved with now. And I met Evie and John. Philotimo Cancer Organization is also a support group, and we support all different types of cancers, and I navigate for them. I do their cancer exercise. We offer support to patients and their families. We've got a whole business support section. And I've just met the most amazing people on this journey, and I sometimes look back and think, my life would never have gone this path if I never had cancer. And it's just, it's almost like it was a gift in a positive way. I would never say it's nice to get cancer. And it's tough. When you navigate, I've had a few patients, especially this year, that I was quite close to, that I've navigated, that have passed on, patients that are fighting, in late stage metastatic disease. And, it's tough emotionally, and it's quite hard. And then I'm just so grateful that I am so healthy, and I continue to be healthy. But at the back of my mind, it's quite scary as well, because I've learned so much and I know so much of what can happen, that sometimes I've got to, I can get quite down. But then I just think, it's just great to be able to, you can only do so much for a patient, and beyond that, it's sort of out of your control, and it is sad to see how many people lose their lives to cancer and what they have to go through, to fight it, but it's just nice to know that you can make some kind of difference, in their journey.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and the education. Definitely before I met you, I didn't even know there was anything like Oncology Patient Navigator. Okay. So if somebody has been affected, or they know a family member that's affected, where do they start in finding an Oncology Patient Navigator? Where do they go to?
Well, a lot of the support groups, it's quite strange. Well, like Prof. Ben has her own navigators at Mill Park and at Helen Joseph. So, but not everyone is always referred to a navigator. She sort of assesses who she thinks might need one. At I think at Helen Joseph, if it's they're taking, they're all navigated and they're counseled, and we prepare them for what they're going to go through. And especially, if they're taking strain, and she can pick up immediately if they are. But I think it's just, it's such a necessity, and it's lacking. And there's a whole thing, even with oncologists, they're so busy, And, patients definitely need it from right from diagnosis right through their treatment. So from diagnosis through your treatment, and as I said, into survivorship is so important. And it just does make such a difference. I mean, in America, it's very big, and all the big cancer centers, it's part, you're employed by the cancer center and you become it. Actually, there's also nurse navigators who are a bit more clinically trained. And then a lot of the patient navigation is now being, like I said, the AONN offer, they've offered the first actual official exam, so it can be recognized. Because, a lot of people don't recognize it, and a lot of the oncologists don't offer it. And I think it's just so vital because they haven't got time to sit with the patient. Just like things when you're facing, like I say, you're so overwhelmed at that initial diagnosis and you have questions. And because you're so shocked, you forget everything you want to ask. So if you have a navigator with you, they can go over everything again with you. They can say what the doctor said that you maybe didn't quite hear because you're so overwhelmed. You can give them questions to prepare to ask the oncologist or for the families to ask. It's all about communication and knowing what to expect. But then it's also difficult. I mean, it depends on, the patient's culture, their level of education, how much they want to know. Some patients bury their heads in the sand and they don't want to know anything. And it takes them a while to sort of then, settle down, and then maybe they do want to know. A lot of patients don't want to know. So, it's quite, you've got to assess, be able to assess the patient and, sort of see where they're at and how much that, you've got to say to them, how much would you like to know? Do you want to know the facts? It can be very daunting, and especially patients that when it becomes a stage 4 cancer and it's no longer curative and it's about quality of life, because then it is all about the patient and the families, and that is very difficult to deal with because often the patient might not want to carry on, but the family doesn't want them to not carry on. And
yes.
So
it's difficult. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you are doing. Thank you for representing the country, as an athlete, for your insights that you've been able to generously share with us, and for being a leader that the world needs today, both as an athlete, a mother, and as well as a survivor that is helping other survivors and others that are going through the journey of cancer, and making us know and believe that there is life after cancer. Thank you, Nicole, for coming to chat to us and for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saray. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to actually hiking more with you and raising money for the work that you're doing, because I think it's important.
No, it's great. Thank you so much for having me and for being an inspiration to me too. I mean, like I said, it's just amazing how doors open when, you exposed to different things, and I think it's so important. I think healthy lifestyle, not only for cancer patients, for everyone.
Yes.
And I mean, I think hiking and, is such a great, because it's not competitive and it's manageable for most.
Yes.
And I think that's what I really like about it. So it's, it's great to be able to, and to want to share that and, get other people involved.
Absolutely. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, and children, if you're listening to us, that was Nicole Fuller talking about athleticism as well as life beyond cancer. And this is Because It's There with Saray Khumalo.
Thank you.